Always good to hear the excitable voice of Brett Ford. Welcome to another edition of Ohio Football Weekly. That's Brett Ford, the play-by-play voice of the Westerville Central Warhawks, who called the play-by-play on one of the more exciting games so far this season in the Central Ohio area. So glad to have you with us here on this Wednesday evening for another edition of Ohio Football Weekly. We've got a jam-packed program coming up for you over the next hour. This show has been on for about the last 4 weeks, and our focus is high school football in the state of Ohio, which we happen to think is the best high school football in the entire United States. So we focus on that. We hear from coaches, we hear from players, we have highlights for you each and every week. We talk about some of the big games, some of the great performances, and we'll do all that on the program tonight. Speaking of which, our program tonight, again, jam-packed this evening. Dublin Jerome head coach Brett Glass will join us here in a few moments. His Celtics are off to an undefeated start, and they have a big game coming up on Friday night. Chillicothe Unioto head coach Matt Hoops will visit with us as well, too. He has an undefeated team that has a big game coming up on Friday. And also, one of the really interesting stories around the area in high school football this year has been the resurgence of the Grove City program. Under the guidance of a Grove City guy, Greg Waits is coaching the Greyhound program, and they are having a great start to the season, so we'll do all that. Also, in the second half hour of the program, our friend Ryan Miller will visit with us, former Ohio State linebacker. He and a couple of guys you may have heard of, Luke Fickle and Mike Vrabel, are the driving forces behind an organization called Second and Seven, which gets books in the hands of youngsters and gives them a chance to meet and talk with some of their favorite football players. So we'll do all that coming up on the program tonight. We also this evening have with you as well, too, a poll up. It's on our Twitter page, or my Twitter page, rather. If you go to @MartyBannister.com, @MartyBannister on Twitter, you can answer our Twitter question tonight, and it's a pretty simple one. Again, none of these are scientific, but we'd like to get your responses to all of this. We're asking you tonight, should the OHSAA leave the football state championships in Stark County or rotate sites? And right now, it's a dead heat. All three choices: rotate sites, keep the games in Canton, or play only at Ohio State. All receiving votes and all in a dead heat right now in our battling. And again, go to my Twitter page, @MartyBannister, MartyBannister, and you can vote on our Twitter poll, which will be up for the next hour or so. All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little high school football now. And as we mentioned, one of the teams that's off to a great start this season, they're out of the gate at 5-0, and they are ready for a big game on Friday night with a 4-1 Thomas Worthington team, the Celtics of Dublin Jerome High School. And visiting with us right now is their second-year head coach, Brett Glass. Coach, first of all, we appreciate you spending some time with us. I know it's right in the middle of practice. You've got interviews to do and so many other things going on right now, but we thank you for spending some time. We'll talk about your football team and your program here in a moment, but you and I talked last year before one of the games we did on Spectrum TV last season with Matt DeRazio. It was your first go-around as the head coach at Jerome, and you ended up having a very good season last year. But it had to be a tough move for me. You're a Jonathan Alder guy. You graduated there, you played there, but this is one of those special type of jobs that if you were going to leave your alma mater, it would be for a position like this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It had to be a good fit. And, I talked to my wife a lot about it, and, I had some familiarity with the school because my principal from Jonathan Alder is a principal here now at Dublin Jerome, Mike Aron. Didn't have to move, it's neighboring school districts. So all those things kind of played into it, and it had to be the perfect spot and the perfect time, and I'm glad I'm here.
It's a program, and it's a district, rather, that's just oozing with talent. All three schools, yours, Kaufman, and Dublin Scioto, there's just a plethora of talent running through the halls at all of those schools, and that has made, I think, the transition a little bit easier for you. I mean, you walked into a program that was pretty well stocked when you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Guestwich, who was here before me, did a really good job. Kids knew how to work. They were tough kids. And we've got, really good skill kids and good offensive linemen. And like you said, the cupboard wasn't bare. It definitely was something I looked into. When you're thinking about taking a job, you want to make sure it's a place you can be successful. And Jerome definitely is that. So yeah, it's been a great transition into year two. And like I said, we have really good kids. And like you said, a lot of talent walking the halls.
How much easier, Coach, does that make it? And you hit on a key point, and almost every coach we talk to on this program says the same thing. We have good kids. And a lot of times that's a generic coach's term, I guess. But with a lot of programs, that's accurate, and it's 100% true. And I think you saw that last year with your players having to go through a transition with a new head coach, and it's carried over to this year. You really have good kids in your program, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just good football players, but good young men that do the right things in the classroom. And I got to know I'm getting to coach speak and all those things. But but really good young men that compete their butts off each and every Friday night, because without that, no football program is going to be very successful.
When you were at Jonathan Alder, you ran a style that worked for the program and for the type of talent that you have. Did you make any major changes when you came to Jerome, or did you instill that same type of style that you like to run on both sides of the football?
It's funny you mentioned that. We do the exact same thing. I believe in certain things, and I'll always tweak based on what we have. But some of my players from Jonathan Alder came to our playoff game last year, and they talked to me after the game and told me, "Hey, I can call the plays out. I know exactly what they are because they're the exact same thing," and certain things like that. So. Yeah, really haven't changed a whole lot, even terminology wise. Our kids from Jonathan Alder could probably come over here and play right now just because it's very similar. But we're always going to tweak what we do year in, year out based on the talent. But pretty much the same thing, and that's a testament to the kids here that have been able to adapt to what we feel is the best way to win.
I want to give you a chance to talk about some of those guys on both sides of the ball here in a moment, Coach. But I was looking at your schedule before we brought you on. You've only played one team with a losing record to date. Looking at the rest of your schedule, no one has a losing record the rest of the way out. Well, what has the start been like for you? I know you had some talent coming back this year. You got a big one coming up with Thomas Worthington on Friday night. But it may sound like an odd question to ask us, but did you expect to be 5-0 hitting this point of the season?
I'd always say we expect to win every game. But breaking in some new players and things, and with our tough out of conference schedule, you just don't know as a coach. But it's always our goal, obviously, to win every single game. We knew we had a good core coming back. Having a quarterback back, having 3 offensive linemen back, the most of our front 6 on defense back. We knew we were going to have a good team. You're never sure how good until you get out there and actually play. But the kids are proving it right now and playing pretty well. And our non-conference was a great way to get us ready for our league schedule here, because, as a head coach, you like to get in there and beginning of the year, if you have 10 games, take 5 and mark W's next to, but there's definitely not that with our schedule. Each and every game, if you look at our scores, we're not really blowing anybody out. We've been down a few times in the second half, and our kids have battled and gotten us here to 5-0, and that's going to help us moving forward, because it's not going to get any easier as we move into conference play.
When you play an intra-district rival, as you did a couple of weeks back when you took on Kaufman, and knowing the success that Kaufman has had over the years, there's a different feel about those games, aren't there, when you play that style of game against that type of opponent that's had, let's face it, they've kind of been the big dog in the area for a long time in that part of the city. As far as high school football is concerned, they've had a pretty good run. But to play them, it's a different week, and it takes on a different type of intensity, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, our kids know a lot of their kids know a lot of our kids. Some of the coaches are pretty close. Some of their actual coaches at Kaufman have actually coached here with some of the guys that are holdovers from Coach Guesswich's staff previously. So everybody knows everybody. But the biggest thing was just the intensity and the rivalry and the student support. Before the game, we walked out for pregame warmups and it's 6:00, and both student sections are filled and they're chanting back and forth at each other. It's just a different environment completely than most games we have here. And just a great game for, Dublin City Schools and for all the kids get to participate and, finally get one. Because if you know anything about the series, I think it was 6-0 Kaufman or 7-0 Kaufman. So we finally chalked one up there for Jerome, which is great.
Coach, are those games good for a school district? Those intra-district games. I hear a lot of talk both sides on that. Are those games good for a school district?
I personally love it. I think it's great for the community. Seeing 8,000-10,000 people in the stands, all the kids running around, all the pageantry that goes with not just high school football, but those big rivalry games. I think Hilliard schools would tell you the same thing with, Davidson, Bradley, and Darby all playing each other. It doesn't get much better than that for as far as I'm concerned. And you have rivals in every sport or every school, but being the same district is just a little different.
You touched on a couple of your players a moment ago. I want to give you a chance before we let you go tonight to talk about some of those guys. Take us on both sides of the ball. Offensively, who's kind of carrying you right now? Defensively, who are some of your standouts on that side of the ball?
Yeah, offensively, our quarterback has been really solid. I know everybody likes to talk about their quarterback, but Zach Shearhart, second-year starter, he's like another coach on the field. Again, cliche there, but it's true, and he's thinking the same thing I'm thinking, and gets us in the right calls and puts the ball where it needs to be. And our offensive line's been really good. We've had a number of games where we rushed for close to 300 yards. So those guys, our starting offensive line, Dave McClinsky, Colton Bauman, Mason Williams, Preston Weston Scow, and who am I forgetting? Kyler LaRosa, who is an absolute beast on both sides for us. And then our running backs have done really well running the ball. Luke McLaughlin is our leader, is a little banged up right now, but we're hoping to get him back soon. And then Kale Hawk has done a good job filling in for Luke. And then our receivers, Zach Thomas, Merrick Zagornis, Braden Alford, Preston Stuckey. So I know I named a lot of guys there, but it hasn't been a one-man show. It's not one where we're, throwing it every single play or running it every single play. So everybody kind of has to do their job. And defensively, our standouts, LaRosa has been an absolute man on both sides, defensive tackle, but also plays offensive line. Against Dublin Kaufman, he's 6'2", 280 pounds, and it was 80-some degrees, and he didn't come off the field for one offensive or defensive snap, played the entire game, which is just super impressive. Brady Sestilli is another guy that's in 5 games has over 50 tackles. Played inside linebacker, has been really good. And just all around our defensive front, Derek Hull, Caden Lockwood, a couple other guys in the front 6 have played really well. And our secondary's grown up. We start mostly juniors there. So, and then I can't not say Carter Holden, our kicker, obviously in the Kaufman game, made 3 field goals, and that was the difference in the game. We won by 9. So, all around, just a huge effort by all of our guys so far, and just want to keep it going.
You said something a moment ago about the Kaufman game where it was very warm and humid that night. It was 90 degrees on the practice field today. It's going to be like in the 60s on Friday. What was that like? Did you do anything different this week or you just, well, it's what it is. Let's just go out and practice and not worry about it?
Yeah. I tell our kids we can only control what we can control, and weather is not one of them. So we just kind of do it. Now today we had to kind of navigate some stormy weather around, and thought with storms and everything, and you can't really do anything about that either. But yeah, it's going to be 90 today, and then 65, probably about 60 at kickoff on Friday. So I remind them to still hydrate and all those things we've been doing all year. But definitely a strange feel, and especially tomorrow when we come out for practice, it's probably going to be in the low 60s as well. So, but yeah, I didn't really do anything different. Just maybe make sure we're hydrating all those things a little more when it's 90 degrees in late September.
You touched on Friday, a big one with Thomas Worthington coming up. They may have surprised a few people. They're 4-1 going into Friday night's game. Give me some thoughts on the Cardinals team you'll face on Friday night.
Yeah, just very well coached. Do a lot of things offensively, throwing the football. They also have a good running back, but they're going to want to throw it around a little bit. And the biggest thing with them, I think, and Coach Pichetti would tell you this, is they started a lot of young guys last year. And we went over there and played them, and it was a close game for a half, and then we kind of pulled away. But you could see it coming that they were going to be a solid team this year. Their defensive front's really good. They got 3. They play a 3-down front. They have 3 really good defensive linemen, good linebackers, guys that have played a lot of football for them. So I'm sure he's feeling good about his team with all those guys coming back from last year. But just a really solid team, and they've had a good season so far. And you were talking about Grove City earlier. That's their one loss there. So we're going to have to be on it on Friday night because Thomas is much improved.
Brett Glass, the head football coach at Dublin. Jerome, a pleasure speaking with you. We thank you for joining us and spending some time with us. I know you've got a busy evening ahead of you. Best of luck on Friday night. We certainly hope we get a chance to talk to you as the season progresses. Thanks again.
Yeah, Marty, thanhanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, take care. Brett Glass, the head coach again at Dublin. Jerome, and it was a tough move. I recall talking to Coach last year before the game before the game we called with Marysville last season, and what it was like to leave. He went to Jonathan Alder, he played at Jonathan Alder, he coached at Jonathan Alder, and then to make the move. And again, very close. If you're not familiar with that part of the region, it's not all that far from Jonathan Alder to Dublin. Jerome. So to make that move from a logistical standpoint wasn't very hard, but from a emotional standpoint was one that he had to deal with, and it certainly worked out very well for him. So again, we appreciate Brett Glass for joining us and thank him for his time, and best of luck to his team. Big game with Thomas Worthington coming up on Friday night. Speaking of top teams around the state, time now to take a look at our Super 7 from week number 5 of the high school football season. These are the top 7 ranked teams in the state according to the Associated Press. We'll break them down by division, and we'll start at the top with Division 1, and we have a new Division 1, number 1. It's Cincinnati Moeller. They have moved to 5-0. They ascended to the top spot after the prior number 1, Lakewood St. Ed, lost to Massillon, Washington. Moeller's 5-0. They knocked off their Well, it's not fair to say huge rival because every team that Moeller plays in the Greater Catholic League is a huge rival, but it's one of their biggest. They beat St. Xavier last week by the final of 20-17. This week they have a matchup at 2-3 Cincinnati LaSalle. Moeller, the number 1 team in the state now in Division 1. Moving to Division 2, Akron-Hoban stays atop at 5-0. They beat Cleveland St. Ignatius last week 28-7. First game this year where they didn't score at least 43 points. They only scored 28 in the win. They have a big one coming up this Friday night when they take on 4-1 Walsh Jesuit. They are the number 1 team in the state in Division 2. Moving down to Division 3, the number 1 team is Hamilton-Baden. They've posted back-to-back shutouts. Last week beat Hamilton-Ross 23-0. They have a Saturday game coming up. They'll host 3-2 Archbishop Carroll in a matchup. And again, the Division 3 number 1 is Hamilton-Baden. Division 4, Cleveland-Glenville stays atop the state. They are 5-0, the Tar-Blooders this season. It's been interesting, if you look at their schedule, they've shut out 3 of their opponents. The other 2 games, they've won each by a touchdown. Last week, a shutout as they blanked Cleveland-Collinwood 44-0. They are at 2-3 Cleveland Rhodes coming up this week. In Division 5, the number 1 ranked team in the state, the Fighting Tigers of Ironton. They only have 2 games left this season with winning teams with winning records, I should say. But both those teams are currently 5-0. Last week, they knocked off the Pointers of South Point 55-12. They play host to 2-3 Chesapeake coming up this Friday night. In Division 6, Marion Local continues to roll right along. Huge win last week. They gave up 16 points, the most they'd given up in a game all season long, because in the prior 4 games, they'd allowed just a grand total of 7 points. They posted 3 straight shutouts going into the game last week. They beat New Bremen again 38-16. They have a huge game coming up with Versailles this week, one of the top-ranked teams in the state in Division 6. Speaking of Division 6, Warren JFK. Division 7, I'm sorry. Division 7, Warren JFK is the number 1 team in the state. They're 5-0. They beat Marlington last week by the count of 28-7. First time they've played a team with a losing record this season. They play at 5-0 Mogador this week, which is number 6 in the state, in Division 6. So that is your Super 7, if you will, around the state of Ohio, according to the Associated Press. We will take a quick time out. When we come back, we will talk a little football from the Ross County, Chillicothe area. When we visit with the head coach of the Chillicothe Unioto Shermans, Matt Hoops, will visit with us when we come back. Great to have you with us for this edition of Ohio Football Weekly.
Hello, I am Annie J. Ross Womack, the Executive Director of the Ohio Sickle Cell and Health Association, and I'm here to talk to the parents and student athletes about a very important topic. The NCAA has instituted different standards for all divisions of student athletes. Before you can play sports in any college or university, you must present a negative trait status or hemoglobin status documentation. Your hemoglobin status is taken at birth with the newborn screening. And what they do is they run your blood for any abnormality or any birth defect. There are thousands of newborn screening birth defects in this country. For more information about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait testing, you can call our offices at 614-228-0157. Or you can visit us via web at ohiosicklecell.org.
Okay. Yeah, I can work with this.
There might be a trap.
Don't have time for that!
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the favorite game show of the upper class, Who's Counting? The game show where our unwilling contestants have to make the really hard choices that count.
Hey, sports fan! Did you know the OHSAA is among the national leaders in social media? Check out the OHSAA's social media platforms for news, tournament information, accomplishments, helpful links, and all the items available in the fan guide, including photos, DVDs, and publications. Check out OHSAA Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram. And who knows, you may be the next featured face.
I mean, I don't totally know what opioids are, but...
It doesn't happen here.
Not in denial.
No.
Our kids are way too busy.
My son has good friends.
Don't live in denial, Ohio. Talk to your kids about drugs, and they'll be up to 50% less likely to use them.
And welcome back to this edition of Ohio Football Weekly. We're going to switch gears just a little bit and visit with Chillicothe Unioto head football coach Matt Hoops coming up a little bit later on in the program. Earlier today, I had a chance to spend some time with Ryan Miller, former Ohio State linebacker. And Ryan, along with some of the guys he played with back in the day, back at Ohio State, he played with guys like Luke Fickell and Mike Vrabel. And one of the things they had to do when they were players was go out and meet with area school children and read stories to them, read books, take them to go to libraries, and they got a chance to meet these youngsters and give back a little bit into the community. And with that in the back of his mind, Ryan Miller and his former teammates formed an organization that is doing great things still to this day. It's called 2nd and 7. And earlier today I had a chance to ask my friend Ryan Miller about 2nd and 7.
All right, let's talk about the real reason I wanted to bring you on today. You're part of a great foundation, a great setup, 2nd and 7. And let's just do the basics with this in the remaining moments that we have. Take us, number one, what exactly is 2nd and 7? How did it get started, and what does it do?
So when I was a student athlete at Ohio State, the pay it forward mentality has been huge ever since Woody Hayes. So when I was there, they asked us to do various community outreach initiatives. One of which I remember was I had to go to a school and read to them during Dr. Seuss's birthday. It was Right to Read Week. And me, Mike, and Luke, Mike Vrabel and Luke Fickell, we went and we read to a school. And I remember thinking to myself prior to going, like, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. I got to focus on Penn State this week. I got a test in chemistry. I got my girlfriend's breaking up with me. I mean, I got all this stuff going on, right? And I didn't want to waste my time going to this school. Me, Mike, and Luke going to the school, and we start to read, and then the kids were just, they couldn't believe it. We were like superheroes to them. They're hugging on us and thanking us for being there. The next week, I got stuff in the mail from them, and I just thought, holy cow, my sphere of influence is significantly greater than I ever imagined. When we graduated, Mike and Luke and I were lifting weights, and we were talking about what we missed about Ohio State. And one of the things I missed was being able to communicate with the kids in the city and go and read to them, because I felt like it was a big impact. So Mike and Luke were like, why don't we keep doing that? Then just because we're not playing doesn't mean we can't continue to do that. So we thought, well, let's continue to do that. But instead of just going and reading, like getting the book from the principal, we decided to have a football camp to raise money to buy books to then go read to 2nd graders. And 2nd graders was a focal point, because if you can get kids on track in the 2nd grade to love to read and get them up to par, life is significantly better.
It cascades,
right?
Yeah.
If they're not, then that gap widens, and then it's like the fundamentals we talked about, right? Reading is a fundamental. And if you can't read at your grade level by the time you're in 4th grade, statistics will bear out that the incarcerations, crime, dropping out of school, all sorts of bad stuff can be tied to literacy rates. So we decided to dig in. We raised enough money to buy enough books to go to 2nd graders at 7 schools that first year. So we called it 2nd and 7, 2nd graders, 7 schools. And then the next year, our football camp grew. We went to more schools. The next year, the camp grew even more. And I went to Gene Smith, who was a new athletic director at the time, and said, hey, this was something we started as a small idea. Now I've got so many books here in my garage. I don't know what to do with all this stuff. Can you please help me with the student athletes at Ohio State? So he made it a departmental initiative. And since that day forward, every year, all the student athletes at Ohio State sign up. They read on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays with Columbus Public Schools, Southwestern City Schools. When coaches have left to go to their programs, they have taken 2nd and 7 with them. So now 2nd and 7, 23 years later, is in 26 different states, 192 different universities and high schools have athletes reading to children. We've donated nearly 1 million books to those kids, and we're super pumped because this November, we're opening up a brand new book bank. People through the years wanted to donate books to us, and now we're able to take them. So we'll be able to sort through the gently used and new ones. We'll be able to keep and redistribute to classrooms, communities, children. The ones that need to go to book heaven, we'll send them on their way, and so on and so forth. But we're enhancing the program this year, which is exciting, but it's been a labor of love. We've seen a lot of impact in the community with not only those 2nd graders, but those student athletes, having that sphere of influence, realization that I once had. And so the whole program has been very positive. A lot of great people have been involved through the years. And so, I'm glad you brought it up because it's something that's been very, very, it's a point of pride, I think, that a lot of us that have been involved with have felt.
It's such a great idea. There's no question, because as you mentioned, the kids looked at you like superheroes. I mean, you're football players. You understood that. But the way they looked at you, if you can spur one kid, that's going to go to another and go to, as you said, go to another, go to another. And it's you hit one, then you start hitting them all. And that's the whole point of all of it. As we wrap up here, we get just a couple moments left. You've got a big event coming up on September the 26th. Do you golf, or are you part of this, or are you going to just go?
That's borderline offensive. I'm such a good athlete, Marty. I mean, come on now. You know that I can golf. I mean, that's like asking me, can I shoot baskets? Yeah, of course I can. I just can't golf that well.
Okay, there's a difference. Okay.
Yeah. So I've got a set of clubs, so I don't know if that makes me a golfer, but I enjoy going out there with my buddies. But this Monday, the 26th, it's called the Pay It Forward Golf Outing. We're honoring Archie Griffin this year with our Legacy of Literacy Award. He's been such an instrumental part in paying it forward through the years. He's touched our lives and our program. We actually write our own children's books the last 15 years, and one of the characters is our Uncle Archie, based upon Archie Griffin. He's been such a dynamic individual, an inspiration to a lot of people through the years. So we're going to honor him, and he's kind of joins a nice group of individuals in the past. Coach Cooper's won that award. Coach Tressel, Ike Kelly has won the award, and so it's been a really, really fun thing for us to be able to honor Archie this year at the golf outing. It'll be at the Lakes on the 26th.
And for those who want to know more about 2nd and 7, as everything else these days, I'm sure you have a website. I'm sure you have a way for people who can reach out and perhaps get involved or help out or want to see what this is all about.
Yeah, it's simple. You just spell it out, secondand7.com. And to your point, Marty, if somebody's interested in volunteering and being a part of our book bank and going through and looking through those gently new and used books, or if they want to go deliver some of those to some of the Boys and Girls Clubs or some of the libraries at the different schools, or even the little libraries around the community, or if they wanted to help us pick up some different things, there's plenty of opportunities to get involved. So secondand7.com, all spelled out. You'll see there the information about the book bank, as well as everything else about the program, about how you can donate your time, talent, or your treasure.
Always great catching up with you, my friend. I'm very pleased for what you're doing. I'm sure it's, as I can tell just by looking at your face, it's a labor of love for you, and something you enjoy a great deal. Good seeing you,
well, it's great seeing you, and I can't believe you're a grandpa. So you're probably the greatest grandpa in the history of the world, man. That is congratulations. And
I think I am. So that's all.
Yeah, I'm sure. One of these days, I'd like to see him. Maybe I can get his knees bent, get him ready in a pre-snap alignment.
He's going to be a hockey player. My son's already decreed that my grandson's going to be a hockey player. That's already determined. So.
Well, then he's going to be tough. I like it.
Visiting with us, former Ohio State linebacker, talking about his 2nd and 7 Foundation, which is doing just great things and helping youngsters around the central Ohio area. And as you heard, it's branching out all across the nation right now. And again, thanks to Ryan for spending some time with us as well, too. And we'll have more of our conversation. There are some other great topics that Ryan and I had a chance to dive into as well. That time didn't permit us to bring on the program tonight, but I wanted to make sure we had a chance to tell you about 2nd and 7. We'll have those all available for you on all of our social media outlets here and there. You see right there at Yamo On Air, Yamo Media Columbus, at Yamo Media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, all the social media platforms. You can find us and you'll be able to hear and see all of our interviews and all of our content, which we are so pleased to bring you each and every week here on Ohio Football Weekly. All right, let's move along now. We've already brought you the Super 7. Well, let's go around the state and catch some of the notable, some of the big performances and some of the big games at the halfway point of the season last week. Let's start with, well, we're going to hear more about this team coming up in a moment. The Grove City Greyhounds coming out of the gate at 4-1. They had a big win over Marysville last week, 48-35. You see it at the bottom of the screen. This is the program that's turned things around with 4 wins and 5 outings. We'll talk to head coach Greg Waits coming up here in a couple of minutes. Nice game by Matthew Pappas last week in the air and running the football. 448 yards passing, 104 yards rushing the football in the win for Grove City. Moving on to Wilmington in the south central part of the state. Their defense, the big part of what they've been able to do this season. Their special teams and defense have scored in every game so far this year. They've got a safety, 2 fumble returns for touchdowns, 4, count them, 4 pick sixes this year, and a punt return for a touchdown. So Wilmington's defense, a big part of the Hurricanes' success to this point of the season. Lamar Sperling continues to chalk up some immense numbers at Akron-Hoban. Last week against St. Ignatius, he carried the football for 29 times for 232 yards. We're at the halfway point, and this young man has already rushed for 1,200-plus yards on the season. He'll be playing his college football in the Mid-American Conference at the University of Buffalo. Akron-Hoban's Lamar Sperling. Antwerp with a big win last week as he moved to the northwest part of the state. They moved into a first-place tie in the Green Meadows Conference, the first time they've been in that position in the GMC this point of the season since 2003. The school has never won a football title in the Green Mountain Conference, or the Green Meadows Conference, rather, and right now they find themselves tied for first place. The Centerville Elks had a big game last week against their rival in the Western Ohio part of the state, Northmont. This game last weekend was interesting. The folks at CNBC were on hand. They were doing a story on Centerville using their Riddell helmets. The helmets track hits to the head to help prevent injuries and bad techniques. They had little sensors in the helmets to kind of track all of that was going on throughout the game, and they had a bit on that on CNBC as, again, safety is such a major part of what goes on in high school football these days, and this was a big part of that, and that was a focus of the story on CNBC. Dominic Johnson of Hawken last week only scored 7 touchdowns, rushed for 181 yards, 4 scores, 68 yards, receiving a couple of touchdowns, had a kick return for a touchdown, and had another touchdown called back in that game, or he would have scored 8 times last week in Hawkins' win. So congratulations to that young man for his big week for Hawken. And Lexington off to a great start, a 22-21 win over their rival from the Ohio Cardinal Conference, Worcester. They scored all 22 of their points in the fourth quarter. A.J. Young to Brandon Fogel for the game-winning score. The 11th biggest comeback so far this season in the state. They scored all 22 of their points in the fourth quarter, coming from behind to win that game last week. And Clinton Massey off the schneid, finally. The defending state champions got their first win of the year when they knocked off Harrison 31-17. As is their way, they didn't attempt to pass in the game. Ran the ball 49 times and churned out 343 yards in the victory as the defending state champions got their first victory of the season. So congratulations to Clinton Massey. That's a staff that's done a great job with that program over the years. And it's not surprising when I say they didn't run the foot or they didn't pass the football. That's their mindset. They don't want to throw it unless they absolutely positively have to do so. So congratulations to them on getting a win here this season. Big games coming up around the state of Ohio and around Central Ohio. And as we touched on in our notables, young man who had a big night plays for a team that's off to a pretty good start this year. They're 4-1 on the season. It's the Greyhounds of Grove City. They play in the treacherous Ohio Capital Conference. They're at 4-1 right now. And joining us on the program tonight here on Ohio Football Weekly is head coach Greg Waits. Coach, we appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. Thanks so much. Congratulations on the start. You're a guy, you were the head basketball coach for a number of years. You were the assistant football coach. You decided to come back and take the football coaching job. You're a Grove City guy. Was this a dream situation for you, I guess, in some respects?
No, I don't know if it was a dream situation, but, just being a part of Grove City High School and the Grove City community and this football program is just an amazing thing. I mean, and I always wanted to be the head football coach of Grove City, and the time it just seemed was never right. I went for it a couple of times, withdrew my name a couple of times over the years, and this just seemed to be the right time and the right fit for myself and our coaches to get involved in it. And I got lucky enough, got fortunate enough, got the job, and now, the kids are doing a great job for us.
For those who don't know the history of the Grove City football program, for years, they were one of the dominant forces in Central Ohio. I mean, make no mistake about it, that program was really a force in the OCC. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but did not they always say that the dogs on the helmet stood for defense always win games? Is that correct?
Back in the days of Brian Cross.
Yeah, Brian Cross, right.
Brian, I remember we were all sitting around talking about it one time, and he talked about we're going to be called the dogs. Defense always wins games, and that's how Brian built his program. Physicality and just being physical every single game. And he talked to our kids about we are going to be the most physical team on the field tonight, and that was the mentality that Brian set years and years ago, and obviously it was very successful.
And out of the gate now at 4-1 is Greg Waits' team. There you see some of the highlights of their game against Marysville last week, which is a big win against a pretty good football team from Marysville, a 48-35 victory last week. I was going to reference, Coach, when I asked you about the dogs thing on the side of the helmets that Grove City had for the longest time. But this was a program, as I mentioned, that was really a major force in Central Ohio high school football. Then there were a couple of years where the program was, because of budgets and things along those lines, it was a struggle. We make no mistake about it. And I think that kind of set the program back for a while, but you've got it back on the right track now at 4-1. Did it seem like you were ever going to get back to this point?
I certainly was hoping so, because, this is a place that I know and love, and I've been around here all my life, other than my 4 years down in Georgia going to college. But, I knew we had some special kids, here at Grove City, and some special coaches, and obviously our community is just second to none when it comes to supporting our football program and athletics in general at Grove City High School. But I knew we had some special kids. As soon as we saw them in the weight room this winter, I knew it was going to be special. And up to this point, our kids have bought in, and they've done an outstanding job. We're so proud of them.
Coach, how much does it help your program and what you were trying to instill in this program that you're a Grove City guy? You played there, you've coached there. As you said, you've only been away from the program 4 years when you went out of state to go to college. How much does it help that you are, for lack of a better term, a Grove City guy?
I think that's a big thing, because obviously I know quite a few people in this city, and obviously the administration, the teachers, and all the kids and the parents of Grove City. So it was a very easy transition to come in and take this job over, and then knowing what we needed to do to get this program turned around.
Won your opener in overtime, then a 7-3 loss to a good Hilliard-Davidson team, and then you've ripped off 3 straight victories. How important was it for you, Coach, to get that first game and win it the way you did in overtime over Scioto? How important was that for you?
Well, and that was really important because our kids obviously they believe in what we're trying to do and what they're trying to do. And then that first game against Dublin Scioto was just nip and tuck back. We got down 14-0 right away. And it could have been one of those things where, oh my gosh, there's no way that our kids are going to think, oh, here we go again, same old thing. But, I grabbed our quarterback, Matthew Pappas, who was just an outstanding young man. I grabbed him when it was 14-0. I said, hey, we're going to go score. We're going to get right back in this game. I said, we are going to get every possession is going to be positive for us. And Matthew looked at me and he goes, Coach, I got you. And right after that, we went right down and scored. And then the whole mindset just turned. The kids started believing again about this lion mentality that we talk to our kids about all the time, the lion is not the largest animal in the jungle. The elephant is, but, the lion is the king of the jungle, because he doesn't care, how big you are, how fast you are, where you come from, what you've done in the past. He's going to go out and he's going to feed his family. And if he wants it bad enough, he is going to find a way to make things happen. And that's the mentality we've sort of tried to talk to our kids about ever since the winter. And that lion mentality came out right there against Scioto when it was 14-0. And our kids knew as soon as we scored that we were going right back in this game, we were going to win it.
Coach, you mentioned that mindset where, oh no, here we go again, and trying to wipe all of that out. I think that's very interesting you brought that up, because I was going to ask you that with the way that game was playing itself out against Scioto. But the great thing is you come back the next week and then you lose a tough one to a very good Hilliard-Davidson team by the final 7-3, and now you've ripped off 4 straight. So that mentality is obviously kind of gone right now with your program, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Our kids believe that. We talk to our kids. If you're great in the weight room every 3 days a week, if you're great in practice, you're going to be great on Friday nights. And so far, our kids have been great in the weight room, and they've been great in practice. And they're just so much fun to be around, and the kids are having a great time, and so are we as coaches. And I think that's the mindset these guys have now, is they don't care who you are, where you are, how big or how fast you are. They're going to come out and compete every single day in practice, and then especially on Friday nights, because they know we got a tough schedule ahead of us.
Absolutely. I'll ask you about that coming up here in a moment. I mentioned also when we were showing some of the highlights of what your team has done, and we put some of Matthew Pappas's numbers up, and we'll talk about him in a moment as well too. But we put that mark on there of 12-68. Kids these days, their memories aren't that long. They don't know things like that. You know it. I know it. But they don't know those things. So I think that has to help as well, too, because these kids don't know what the program didn't do in the back in 2012 or 2009. They're focused on right now, so that has to be a big advantage for you as well too. This is where we are now. Let's worry about right now.
Exactly, and that's the way we approach every single day. Like, I have all these people ask me all the time, hey, you got a big game this week. Oh, what about next week? No, we don't care about who we play next week. The biggest game is the one we are playing, and that's the one our kids are focused on. Like, New Albany is our biggest game of the year right now because it's the one we're playing, and that's the mindset that we as coaches and our team has taken every single day. We don't look ahead. We don't look backwards. We move forward, and we get ready to get after the next team we're playing. That's the Ohio State-Michigan game, every game for us, whoever we're playing.
Your offense right now has churned out over 40 or more points in each of the last 3 games. We mentioned the numbers that Matthew Pappas put up last week in the big win over Marysville. Let's break down both sides of the football, Coach. Talk about, along with a guy like Matthew Pappas, some of your standouts on offense, then take me over to the defensive side of the ball too.
Yeah, and I guess our mindset on offense was, and we talked to our kids way back in February about this when we first got the job. Our number one goal, we want to run 80, 85 plays every game. Like in the past, we've been running 40, 45 plays a game, maybe if that. We had to figure out ways how we were going to have a chance to be successful and win. And we thought, like when I was a basketball coach, we said we had to figure out a way to win in this league we played in basketball. And we were going to run as fast as humanly possible and try to get a shot up every 4 or 5 seconds. So we sort of got our heads together and said, in football, we're going to get out here. We're not running the wing tee anymore. We're not running the football anymore. We are going to try to snap the ball every 10 seconds. And that's what we've been trying to do. And tempo is our friend. And we tell our kids that every day, tempo, tempo, tempo. And our kids have really bought into it. When we first started doing it this summer, oh my gosh, our kids are like this. Oh my gosh, what's going on? They're dying. But, now they're in really good shape. And they love it. They come over to the sideline all the time. Coach, we got a tempo faster, faster, faster. And that's the way we think that we have a chance to compete with some of the teams in our league, which our league is just outstanding from top to bottom. So offensively, that's what we're trying to do, spread it out. We're gonna throw it around. We're gonna chuck it around. We're gonna have fun doing it, and then we're gonna mix in some runs. Like last game, I think we threw it 40 some odd times, and we ran it 30. So we're pretty 50-50, and well, not quite 50-50, but it's getting close to that way because we got a great offensive line. These kids are big, strong, and they enjoy what we're doing. And we have some really good skilled receivers. And then our quarterback, Matthew Pappas, what a leader. What a kid. This kid, he clocks in every single day. And for the 2 hours and 20 minutes we're out there, he is nonstop because I coach him and he doesn't have a break. That kid is 100%. When we're on defense, we're on special teams, he is down doing footwork drills, scramble drills, throwing the ball, doing RPOs. He is nonstop. And he's one of those kids that anything that comes his way positive, he deserves because he works for every single thing.
Defensively, Coach, what stands out there for you right now?
Oh, and defensively, Marysville, first of all, last week, Marysville, they're an outstanding team, coached really well, and they're big physical kids. In the first half, we did a great job. We only gave up 7 points. In the second half, we didn't do a good job running downhill and just really playing physical. But we have some we got some hitters on defense. Kids are going to play, and our defense coordinator, Chris Barbizo, does an outstanding job with those kids, putting them in the right place for our kids to be successful. And our kids on the defensive side, they believe it. They fly around, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to fly around. We didn't want our kids thinking too much. We wanted things simple, and our kids are buying into it, and they are flying around, and they play extremely hard on defense, and we want to be the most physical team out there also.
Coach, I would think that this is a style that kids, I would think, react very well to it. This type of up-tempo, let's go. We're going to play this way. If you want to play with us, that's fine. If you don't, then we're going to run right past you. You have to. That's a mentality I think kids really enjoy.
Oh, yeah, and our kids know. They come to the sidelines, and they're like, let's go. We know. Our mindset is every possession, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to score. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But our kids believe it. Our kids believe in the tempo, and they love it. And if I get the dadgum playing too slow, our kids are like, "Come on, coach, let's go." I'm like, "You're right. We got to get it in faster. That's on me." But our kids are enjoying it. They love it, and it's a fun way to play the game.
Got a big one coming up Friday night with a pretty good New Albany team that's had a great run the last couple of years. They're 4-1. What stands out about this Eagles team you'll face on Friday, Coach?
Yeah, and they're very similar to Marysville in offense. They run the wing tee to perfection. The coaches, they do a great job with it. And defensively, you know, they get after you, they blitz, they plug, they lightning sun. They do an awful lot of stuff on defense, you know, that we're preparing for right now, and it's tough to prepare for them. But they're really coached really well, and offensively they run the wing tee to perfection. And we got our hands full trying to stop those guys again. And then their defense, they run all over the place, and they're really, really active, and they're very aggressive. So, you know, we'll have our hands full with New Albany. They're a good football team.
You mentioned it earlier that you have to focus each game each week. You can't look ahead to week 9 or week 10. And in the league that you play in the Ohio Capital Conference, and you know this because you've been around this league for a long, long time, if you do that, it's going to be a tough way to try to get through a season. So I guess you have to have that mindset, don't you, each week that this is our opponent. We're not going to worry about week 7. We're not going to worry about week 9 because we've got another OCC opponent this week.
Exactly, and we tell our kids that this is the biggest game on our schedule because it's the one we're playing. And I'm telling you what, every team in our league, if you are not ready in our league, you're going to get beat. If you're taking somebody for granted or just didn't have a great week of practice and you're not showing up, you're going to lose. And I don't care who you are, you're going to lose. Our league is exceptional from top to bottom.
Coach, I'm very happy for the start you had with your program, and I can tell just by looking at you right now that you're all bought in. I mean, you're a Grove City guy, as we touched on at the top of this, and this is where you want to be, and it's obvious your kids have bought into it, and you've got the program headed in the right direction. Congratulations on the start, and thanks for spending some time with us tonight here on Ohio Football Weekly.
Well, Marty, we appreciate you having me on, and we really appreciate everything you guys do for high school sports and sports around the state of Ohio, and want to thank you very much for that.
Coach, I think at one time I might have fouled out of a game trying to guard you in basketball. You played at Grove City, correct?
I did.
I played at Whitehall, so we graduated the same year in 1980. So I remember playing at Grove City. I'm pretty sure that I probably fouled out trying to cover you or something.
Well, I don't know. I probably hacked the crap out of it because I was a hack on defense. I know that.
Well, defense was just something I did between. Defense was just something I did between possessions. So that's the way we looked at it. So.
Well, I just came down and gave it to all these guys. I thought they were shooters, and I just went back and played defense.
Coach, best of luck the rest of the way out. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Marty. Appreciate it.
All right, Greg Waite's the head football coach and used to be the head basketball coach at Grove City. And he has the Greyhounds out of the gate at 4-0 right now. They have a huge one coming up on Friday night when they take on 4-1 New Albany. And they've still got some big games left. A couple of 4-1 teams still left on their schedule in Westerville Central, or Pickering and North rather, and Gahanna Lincoln. We'll step aside, take a quick time out, and continue along on this Wednesday evening edition. This is Ohio Football Weekly.
Hello, I am Annie J. Ross Womack, the Executive Director of the Ohio Sickle Cell and Health Association, and I'm here to talk to the parents and student athletes about a very important topic. The NCAA has instituted different standards for all divisions of student athletes. Before you can play sports in any college or university, you must present a negative trait status or hemoglobin status documentation. Your hemoglobin status is taken at birth with the newborn screening. And what they do is they run your blood for any abnormality or any birth defect. There are thousands of newborn screening birth defects in this country. For more information about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait testing, you can call our offices at 614-228-0157. Or you can visit us via web at ohiosicklecell.org.
Okay. Yeah, I can work with this.
It might be a trap.
Don't have time for that.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the favorite game show of the upper class, Who's Counting? The game show where our unwilling contestants have to make the really hard choices that count.
mean, I don't totally know what opioids are, but...
It doesn't happen here.
Not in denial.
No.
No.
Our kids are way too busy.
My son has good friends.
Don't live in denial, Ohio. Talk to your kids about drugs, and they'll be up to 50% less likely to use them.
Hey, sports fan! Did you know the OHSAA is among the national leaders in social media? Check out the OHSAA's social media platforms for news, tournament information, accomplishments, helpful links, and all the items available in the fan guide, including photos, DVDs, and publications. Check out OHSAA Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram. And who knows, you may be the next featured face.
in that schedule so that I can make it beneficial for both groups of players and athletes. And the last thing was I have the best assistant coaches around that are able to pick up the slack and do some things that maybe when I'm not able to do them, whether it's in June in the weight room as in terms of football, if I've got, something going on basketball wise. So, it's all just really, it's worked out. I think it's worked out really well. Our numbers in football, we have over 60 players playing, which is really good for our school. And a lot of those guys are dual sport athletes in terms of football, basketball guys. So, it may seem crazy, but honestly, I have more time now coaching 2 varsity sports than I did, coaching the 2 lower level sports and assistant AD and as well as coaching basketball. So, I get the most out of my days, obviously, but as hard as it is to believe, I do have a little bit more free time just with these 2 sports as opposed to what I was doing.
I think it also has to be special for you, Matt. Again, for those who don't know, your 2 sons play both football and basketball and play other sports as well too, Unioto. So that has to help as well too. I think for you to, again, people would think, right, well, how's he going to deal with his family? You mentioned your wife and how supportive she is, obviously, to what you do. But your 2 sons are playing all the sports that you coach. So that helps as well too. You're with them every day.
It does. It's and I'm sure it's not the easiest thing in the world for them at times. But this is going on year 3 of doing this, and I think that it's gotten easier each of the years. When I first started doing it, Blake was in 8th grade, Newton was a freshman, and then obviously last year freshmen and sophomores, and now this year they're sophomores and juniors. So it's gotten easier for them as that's gone on, and really, it's gone so fast that I look at it and think I only have 2 more years of this with them both at the same time, and have really just tried to take a step back and really enjoy it a little bit more than maybe I had.
And that's an interesting point because, as we all know, those of us that have kids and have raised children, it goes by in the blink of an eye. And before you know it, they're off doing other things. And you have a chance now to watch them continue to grow and help them and help mold them into great athletes and great student athletes as well, too. And I think that's a very key point in all this for you. For your football program, as we mentioned, coming in off the win last week over a defending champion, Piketon, a 36-6 win. The folks at Piketon, I thought, did a really nice thing. For those who don't know, your program has dealt, and your school has dealt with some tragedy off the field as well, too, over the last year or so. The folks at Piketon stepped forward last week and donated half of the 50-50 pot to the fund last week. Maybe tell us about that a little bit. And I think that just shows, for the people who don't know, Matt, what the Scioto Valley Conference is really like. This is a pretty tightly packed conference of good people who understand what each program goes through.
Absolutely. Our school and our basketball program lost a freshman last year, Jude Little, to an illness he had been battling, and it was really difficult for our school and our basketball program to overcome. But one of the things that has allowed us to do that is the tightness of our community. Jude originally was from Piketon. He and his family moved to the Unioto School District when Jude was in 6th grade. But it's such a community. The SVC is, it's a very intense. When competing, it's very intense. Because it is such a small community in terms of how close all of the school districts are to one another. But anytime tragedy hits, you can, you feel good knowing that those people have your back. And this tragedy that we dealt with happened in January, and here we are in September, and they're still trying to show their support by donating so much money. I think it was close to $1,600 that they donated to the Jude Little Foundation, which in turn goes back into all of the Scioto Valley Conference schools, offering scholarships to each of those 8 schools, graduating seniors. So it kind of just comes full circle. They put that money in. The Little family, Mike and Aaron, take that money and set aside $1,000 for each of the Scioto Valley Conference schools to give to a graduating senior each year. So, it's a blessing to be a part of such a great league and such a great community.
All right, let's talk about your team right now. You mentioned Blake and Newton, your sons, who are quarterback, wide receiver on the football team, but you've got a lot of talent on both sides of the football, Coach. Maybe break it down for us offensively, along with your 2 sons who start for you, some of the other standouts on both sides of the ball for you right now.
Well, I think one of the things with our football team is our depth is amazing right now. Our offensive line, which continues to get better each week, those guys only play on the offensive line. So, that helps us in terms of practice going ones-on-ones up front, because in turn our defensive line only plays one way as well. So, we got guys up there. I think we have to start. When you talk about that group, you got to start with our leader, a 3-year starter and captain, Nathan Morrison, who plays center for us. And he just is always in the right place at the right time and making sure everyone's doing the right thing. So, he really leads that group. In terms of our skill guys offensively, we have a plethora of running backs. Corbin DeMint is our starting tailback. He's averaging over 6 yards a carry. And then Matt Griffin spells him at tailback too. And this is funny to say this, and probably people may think I'm crazy, but Matt Griffin averages 15 yards a carry, but he plays more defensively than he does on offense. It's just when he touches it offensively, it seems like we've worn teams down, and he's still a little bit fresh, and he only averages 6 or 7 carries a game. And then Cody Tuttle, Casey Dre are also huge pieces out of the backfield, as well as Holden Newkirchner. And then you mentioned Newton Hoops is our quarterback. He's a 2-year starter. I think he's thrown 12 touchdowns this season so far, a little over 800 yards, and completing 65% of his passes, which is really good. And the guys he's thrown to are Blake Hoops, who's a sophomore wide receiver. I believe he's had a little over 200 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. And then our senior wide receiver, who's a 2-time All-State player, Maddox Fox, is right around 400 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns. He just broke our school's career reception yardage record, and he's tied our career receiving touchdowns record. And last year he tied our single game record with 14 receptions in one game. Defensively, we're just really young up front. We start one senior, Nolan Fox. As I talked about Nathan offensively on the offensive line, Nolan Fox is the leader of that defensive line, with Andrew Griffin, senior defensive end, and Marcel James, Xander Carey, sophomore tackles, and sophomore defensive end KB Perkins. So those guys anchor us. And then at the linebacker position, we have a freshman, David Long, senior Cody Tuttle, and a junior Ethan Summer. And then in the back half, we have, I mentioned before, Matt Griffin and Casey Dre, who just lead those guys back there. Casey leads us with 3 interceptions. Isaiah Cunningham is a lockdown corner. He has 2 interceptions. He's a senior. And then our other cornerback is sophomore Caden Cutright. So all of those guys, just tremendous athletes, have put in a lot of work in the off season, and it's paying off.
Absolutely. Off to this 5-0 start and headed to a game on Friday night at home with Adina in the Scioto Valley Conference. And this is a league, again, for those who don't know, there's pretty good football played in this league. Your program, Zane Trace, is ranked in the top 10 in the state of Ohio right now. Paint Valley is bouncing back into form with a 3-2 mark. And Piketon had a tremendous run last season, so there's some good football played in the Scioto Valley Conference. Matt, I know you think a lot about, or your focus is each game, each week out, and that's the only way you have to approach this right now. But this is also a league where I think you know what lies ahead for your football team right now, and I think that's the exciting part of this as you close in on the second half of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, because obviously this is somewhat new to us. I think someone told me the other day that this is the first time since 1969 that Unioto's been 5-0, which is it's kind of just mind-boggling if you think about that. But these guys have done a great job staying grounded, staying humble, working really hard each day in practice, and really just trying to go 1-0 every Friday night. And I think as long as we can continue to do that and improve, we'll be where we need to be at the end of the season.
And before you know it, it'll be time to roll the balls out for basketball practice, right?
Yeah. Hopefully we can delay that a little bit. But like I said, I couldn't do this without our basketball assistant coaches, PJ Fitch, who's been a head coach in the area for 20 years, and John Bruce do a nice job with our off-season program. And I have to mention Nick Easterday, who the first 2 years that I decided to do football, basketball, he had been my longtime varsity assistant coach, and he just put in hours and hours of work with the guys, that weren't playing football. So like I said, I can't do any of this without those guys. Woody Hayes said it the best. You win with people, and I'm just blessed to be surrounded by so many great people.
Head coach of football and boys varsity basketball at Chillicothe Unioto, Matt Hoops. I appreciate you sticking with us tonight. Glad we got the technical difficulties worked out and we're able to bring you on and have you get a chance to talk about your program and talk about your story a little bit. Matt, I appreciate your time. We'll see you down the road.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, Matt Hoops, the varsity football coach and the varsity boys basketball coach at Chillicothe Unioto High School in the southern part of the state. All right, that'll do it for tonight's edition of Ohio Football Weekly. A reminder, our poll is still up for you. You have a chance to answer our question on our Ohio Football Weekly poll tonight, and you can go to my Twitter page, at Marty Bannister, and we're asking you tonight, should the OHSAA leave the football championships in Stark County or rotate sites? And right now, keep the games in Canton has a rather substantial lead in the poll right now, followed by rotating the sites and also as well, too, by playing the games only at Ohio State. Before we wrap things up tonight, we want to mention some sad news coming out of the northwestern part of the state. If you know anything about the Midwest Athletic Conference, the closeness of that league, we're talking about the closeness of the Scioto Valley Conference, smaller schools all seem to rally around one another. Well, I know they're doing that tonight in the Midwest Athletic Conference and in the northwest part of the state. Brian Harlemert, who was the longtime baseball coach at Coldwater, has passed away at the age of 51. A guy who anybody you talk to in that part of the state will tell you that Brian Harlemert was just a class guy from on the field, off the field. The student body loved him. He was such a big part of the Coldwater community, and passing away unexpectedly at the age of 51. So we certainly send out our thoughts and prayers to the folks in the Coldwater community and as well in that Midwest Athletic Conference and all the folks that surround that program. We're thinking of you here at Ohio Football Weekly as you deal with a very difficult time. That'll do it for this evening's program. Thanks to Adam Dell for running the show, as always, doing a great job dealing with some technical difficulties and getting you a chance to hear everybody we had scheduled for the program tonight. That's the whole point of it. And again, we thank all the coaches who visited with us, Brett Glass, as well as Matt Hoops from Unioto and Greg Waits from Grove City, and our friend Ryan Miller visiting with us as well, too. That will do it for this edition of Ohio Football Weekly. Check out our social media sites. You can see clips of this program, and there you see how you can access us as well, too. We're back with you next Wednesday night at 6:30 to once again talk high school football in the state of Ohio on Ohio Football Weekly.